and welcome to the Winning Culture Blueprint. This is a podcast to help you build winning culture and teams that get stuff done while building margin into your life. In episode one, we tackled questions regarding strategy alignment and what part does culture play in execution of your strategy. Now, in this episode, we'd like to zoom in a little further on that people side. How do you hire, engage, and develop a team that actually fits your culture and moves your mission forward? Because no strategy survives a contact with a disengaged front line. You may remember in episode one, I'd asked a number of friends and colleagues to give me questions that seem to be burning. I've also added a few questions of my own in there that I hear a lot of times in my coaching practice at Peak Executive Solutions. And so as we get started, I'm going to start out with a question from one of my clients named Mike. And here was the question that Mike had. My operators and some of my supervisors seem like they are simply going through the motions, just clocking in and clocking out. So to answer Mike's question here, I want to ask the question about how do we engage the front line, both our supervisors and the people that work on the floor? Are we meeting with them daily? Are they clear on what good looks like? Do we engage with them on the floor in activities? Do we have mechanisms that remind them what's important and make them feel like they are part of the bigger picture? So the real question I would have is, do your operators not just align with your strategy, where you're going, and most importantly, why you're going there, as Simon Sinek likes to say, but do they understand what part they play in your strategy and in where you're going? I like to tell a story. A lot of people have already heard this story from me, but I'm going to tell it again anyway because a lot of the listeners won't have heard it. But a story goes something like this. In 1962 or 3, President Kennedy was our president, and he was leading the nation during a time of crisis. But one of the things that he was focused on, and one of his strategies, was being the first to the moon. So as part of his strategy, he visited NASA and he talked to people. And he came across this guy working in the hallways in NASA, and he was mopping the floor, as the story goes. He stops and introduces himself and says, "Hey, I'm John Kennedy. I'm the president. I got a question for you. How do you like working at NASA?" And the guy sits and he thinks for a second, and he tells President Kennedy, "I really enjoy working here because I'm helping put a man on the moon." And I think the listeners get the picture of why that's important. But this guy really got it, right? He might have been just the janitor, just the guy sweeping the floor in his mind before he got to understand what his part of the story was. He was literally helping put a man on the moon. So in your business, whether you're manufacturing bricks, roof tiles, whether you're pouring concrete or building a cathedral, what is the story that your folks would understand, that whether they're running a machine, driving a forklift, working in maintenance, maybe they're in the back office doing accounting or FP&A work? How does what they do get the entirety of the team to that finished cathedral, or the beautiful American dream of living in a brick home, or putting a man on the moon? So help them find their part of your story, and you will start to gain momentum and people that are actually engaged in the work they do. If you have more questions on that, which I'm sure you do, feel free to reach out and we can talk more about how do we help you get your teams aligned. The next question is from a guy I know named John, not a client, but runs an IT business. And one of the things John says here is, "I'm having a hard time finding people who truly match our culture." And so super interesting. One of the things that we teach at System and Soul and Peak Executive Solutions is that culture is the culmination of the values that are true, the true core values of your business. These aren't just statements put on the wall. Isn't just as Lencioni says, the values traps or the aspirational goals, but goals that you live out through habits. So you take these values and then you add habits, things that live on your calendar, and those two things together truly create a culture. Now, what's the point in that? So when you're hiring, when you're having hard conversations, when you're measuring performance, it's not at all about just getting things done, although that's the end game. It's really about living out those values. If you're walking the hall and you're not living out the values that you say are important to you and your team, people won't believe you. So I would just say when you create those and understand what's truly valuable to you and to your business and the people that work there, make sure you test that. Create that as part of your winning strategy of hiring. Perhaps even create a team, an hourly team, to be part of that interview process to help give you feedback on what they see so that they're also part of the mission and finding the right people and giving you feedback on whether or not you think or they think that they're a right fit, because it's not just about the task. It's not just about having skills. It's also about having alignment to where you're going and why, as we said from the question from Mike. All right, question 3. This one was anonymous, and it said, "We keep hearing leadership always ignores our recommendations and they don't really care." Okay, I can see why it was anonymous, but let's not pretend, guys. We've all heard this before. If you've been in any industry, anywhere, for any length of time, you've probably heard this before. It's like, I told them, but they don't listen to me. And so the simple reaction to that I would have is, what systems, what processes do you have to get feedback? The old school way was perhaps a suggestion box. I've seen some new things that I think work better, which is in your stand-up meetings as you get started in the morning and you're looking people in the eye and reminding them, why are we there, right? We're helping put a man on the moon. We're helping build the American dream. Or we're creating a space where employees have a voice. That you find a place to write down their concerns, their causes that they think that are causing that, and what potential solutions do they have? Let them be part of something bigger. And a couple of things start to happen when you do that. The first thing is they feel seen and heard, right? And when I talk about they, I'm talking about our employees. But when you talk about the big end, the management, the we or the us, you want it to feel like it's everybody. So this visual indication that you're both listening and hearing and that they're being seen also holds you accountable and your supervisors and frontline accountable to following up on those suggestions. And that doesn't mean that you always do what's brought up, right? It can't always be roses. You can't do everything. You can't be everything for everybody, as they say. But it will hold you accountable to come back to that person and say, hey, we saw you, we heard you, and we understand why you feel that way. But this is why we can't do it right now, either because of money or time, or we're focused on something else. But as they say, when people feel seen and heard, they can buy into the mission. And, a lot of times I think it just comes down to that, feeling like they had a voice, like somebody was listening. So it doesn't just give them a voice, but it also holds yourself, your team, your frontline leaders accountable, and is a visual indication and reminder that you're listening. All right, question 4. Looks like it may have came from the same person. It is anonymous. It says, we're in a period of rapid growth and hiring, but it seems to be diluting the culture that we already have in our business. So I hear what you're saying, right? You had a culture, things are going good. You had a core team. They understand the vision. Perhaps they were part of the startup and, really felt like they were part of something bigger. Now you're growing. You're having to hire new people, more people, and, hiring people that fit with your culture. And again, back to your core values can be very challenging. And especially if they're not designed well or people don't understand what do those values actually mean. And so again, hiring for that culture, hiring for the values, having hard conversations when things aren't done in congruence with your core values, that'll set you on the right pace for hiring the right people, having the right questions, perhaps having a hiring team like we talked about earlier that includes people at all levels. So you think about it from different sides of the business. And I find this particularly advantageous when you're hiring a leadership team member, whether it's a supervisor or even a VP level, is to hire somebody, have the team also be part of that interview process, because when the team members help you pick your next leaders, they also buy into that leader in a lot of cases, and they feel ownership. So it'll help carry them through that sort of onboarding period, or that period of time where things feel maybe a little less sure. And so think about that a little bit. What other things might you think or ask to make sure that you're hiring the right people for the right reasons, not just skills, but also alignment to what your business is already about? All right, last question for this episode, and that is, my entire leadership team. It's not a question. Well, I guess it is. My entire leadership team seems to be burning out. What do I do? And man, I tell you, this really seems to be something that comes up a lot. If you listen to anything I say on a regular basis, I talk about creating margin, right? It's about creating that space between the capacity that you have and where you currently are on an emotional level, on an energy level, because we know that leaders that bring energy attract other people with high energy. People seem to follow them. So here's what I'd say. Ask yourself the question, ask your team the question. How many hours are they working? What are they doing at home to make sure they're pouring into their family, they're pouring into their self emotionally, energy wise? Are they working out? Are they eating the right things? And I know this sounds very, very soft, but it's not. It's really quite hard to make sure you've got that balance. It's probably a little cliche to talk about work-life balance, but there really is something magic to having some of that. And I'm going to draw an analogy to professional athletes. And if you looked at a pro athlete's workout schedule, they've got very prescribed recovery times, very prescribed low effort workouts, but also very, very prescribed high effort workouts at or above their normal capacity. And what does that do? That builds both top line margin, right? Capacity, but it also allows them to rest and recover when when they need to, so that when something comes that's really, really hard, they can put out that extra effort to get things done. So I'll just remind you a lot, think about when you come up with your best ideas, when you come out of, whether it's sleep, rest, exercise, a walk in the woods, maybe just listening to some music while you think about and ponder the things that are on your mind. Maybe it's working with your hands, building something. But everybody has that thing that really restores their energy, where they think they're best, where they come up with their ideas. It's really no surprise that some of the best ideas are found while you're out in nature, honestly, not specifically thinking about the things you got to work on. Things come to your head. That's really about creating that margin between your capacity and where you're at right now. So I highly encourage you to think about that. A lot of this is a little back and forth with, how do you hire the right people? How do you keep them engaged? And what do you do to keep them there? So I had a couple of things as we close out this episode. This was really about your culture and DNA. And next, I want to dig in a little deeper. Once you have the team, right, how do you keep dysfunction from creeping in? And I really like to use a model that was really coined and used by Patrick Lencioni in his book, The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. We're going to walk through each of those in this next episode. And I think I've titled the next episode, let's see if I can find it. Yes, episode 3, The Trust Factor. And you'll see as we dig into this, the trust factor. Trust is really the foundation that you must have to create cohesion within your team. I hope this helps you. Go out and lead big, lead well, and we will see you soon, perhaps next week.